Okay, class, this is our first vocabulary video. Every week I will introduce the vocabulary words using a video instead of taking the time and doing it in class. This way it goes much faster, but also you could refer back to this throughout the year and watch it a couple times if you'd like to before the quiz that we have every other Friday on the vocabulary words. Now, we've already been making note cards for literary devices and vocabulary style words that go with our textbook, but now we're going to start with wordly wise vocabulary words as well. So the note cards are a little different. Still looking at this idea of you have two sides to the note card. The first side should have your first and last name in the top left-hand corner, kind of like the MLA heading. And please make sure it's your full name. We have some double up on names, so that helps me with that. The vocab word goes in the middle, quite large, and below it goes the part of speech. And this all goes on the front or the white blank side of the card. On the back of the card, there are 4 pieces of information that are required. You need the definition, and you need to actually label this. So you need to write definition, do the semicolon, and then actually write it out. Do the sentence example, and this is your sentence. It's not the sentence from the textbook or from the Wordly Wise workbook. It's not the sentence you find online. It's a sentence that you're writing that's within your words, so that you're getting more samples to go with it, and then 2 synonyms and 2 antonyms for the word. A lot of the vocab quizzes that we have on Fridays will focus on synonyms and antonyms and sentence examples, so having these prepared and looking through these through the week will help you. Each time you flip through your vocab note cards, I suggest you don't just make the cards, but that you actually use them and have it be a vital part of your vocabulary lesson and practice each week. So I suggest that once you make the cards that you actually flip through the cards and ask yourself examples and stuff like that with it, so that helps. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and switch over to a web page. First of all, there are a couple resources that I want to show you. If you go to the wordlywise3000.com site and specifically look at the games aspect, you'll notice here that there are crossword puzzles for each lesson. There's one for every 4 lessons, and there's even a battleship game where you actually have to place your ships and answer vocab questions in order to be able to shoot a cannon at the opponent, which in this case is the computer, but still it requires vocab aspects. And one for lessons 1 through 4, and the battleship actually covers lessons 1 through 4, so it's not just lesson 1. But every 4 lessons we will be having a major test, so this could also be a good way to review for that. Wordly Wise used to actually have all of the lesson information here on the left, so if you've ever looked at the website in the past, it used to actually have the word lists and stuff too, but it does not. So I had to go find the digital information somewhere else, so that because I don't have the book, I mean I have the book, but I'm not able to hold it up to the camera and go through the information for you. So you can find the same information in your Wordly Wise book, but this is me actually going through it with you, giving you some examples and samples, so that you have some hints and clues on how to understand the words better. If you actually are using the Quizlet website, you'll notice it actually turns these into flashcards. There's spelling, there's a test, there's different games to play with each word list, and it will actually keep track of your scores if you want to make a free account and stuff. So it's another good way to practice. Okay, now star is if you need to extra study this word, and then here is if you want to actually listen to the pronunciations of the words. I'm going to give you pronunciations, so you might not have to listen to that, but when you don't have me, if you have problems with pronunciations, that can help you. Okay, first word, apocryphal. Apocryphal. Noticing it is an adjective, so remembering adjectives describe nouns, pronouns, and other adjectives. Of dubious authenticity or origin, or something that is spurious. So we automatically already start with a word that's a little weird, but the idea is that it's very authentic, in its origin. So what this means, as in dubious and authenticity, is the fact that even though it's not correct or it's not authentic in its origin and where it came from, because the story has been told so much, it actually, people have taken it to become true. So the original story has been passed down and we believe it to be true, but in actuality, the authenticity, we can't find the true story or we don't know it because it has changed so much over time. Arcane is an adjective. It's understood by only a few or it's mysterious. So if you're looking at something that's arcane, it's usually like something that's so old or so complex that it's difficult for people to put their minds around. This wouldn't be like a subject like calculus or physics or something like this, but it's something like old and mysterious, kind of like vampires and ghosts, and it has that mysterious aspect to it that it's so old we don't necessarily understand the full thing. Convene is a verb. It has two definitions, so you need to write both definitions. You do only need to write a sentence, though, for one of the definitions. You don't need to write a sentence for each definition. So the first one is to summon or cause to assemble. And the other one is to gather or assemble or to meet formally. So if we're convening or calling a meeting, we're asking people to assemble at a certain time. So when we have our club meetings, like we know JSA Club usually last year would meet on Wednesdays. So we know that the meeting convenes at lunch in such and such room on this day at this time. So it's that idea that you're being summoned and called together. You're asked to gather. And the second one is the idea that it's more formally. So there's usually an invitation to go with it to make it a little bit more formal. This would be more like the idea of Congress, the Board of Regents, a CEO, and their board wanting to meet with them. So it's much more on the formal side is the second definition. Expedient has two parts of speech. And three definitions. So all of this needs to fit in your note card. Number one, looking at the adjective side of it, it's useful for some purpose or convenience. Or number two, concerned primarily or exclusively with serving one's own interest. So the idea is it's useful for some purpose, as in like it's a tool that you use for that purpose. So an expedient for completing your note cards is a note card and a pen. So it helps with that. The noun adjective aspect is a means employed to bring about a certain result, as in what do you need to get to an end result. So if you're trying to get into college, what do you need to get into college? Your expedients would be your entrance in sports, your entrance in clubs, your good grades, your SAT scores. So it's the means that you have to bring about the end result. Exude is a verb with two definitions: to flow out slowly or to ooze or emit. And the second one, to give forth, to exhibit in abundance. So oozing or emitting is this idea that something just flows out, like there's too much of it. And I think of this as like Ghostbusters, and you have like Slimer in there, and he's just sliming, and his slime is oozing out, and it's hitting things and people, and there's just a lot of it. So it's just like pouring out of the pores. The second definition, to give forth, to exhibit in abundance, is the idea that there's just so much of it. I think of this as kind of like you're sweating. So if you're working out and you're exuding sweat, there's just so much of it and so much abundance of it that your body's just giving forth it. Also, there's the people that just talk too much. So they exude or ooze out their words and their conversations too much in that. The next one we have is gesticulate, is a verb. This is one of my favorite ones. To motion energetically with the body or limbs. So it's not just, kindly waving at somebody, but it's actually like flailing your arms and making motion, and there's emotion usually behind it, and there's energy. So it's showing that emotion to go with it. And we don't do inappropriate gesticulations in my class, so don't think of that in this aspect, but think of it more as positive and energetic aspect. Imperturbable is an adjective, so this is calm and assured. So this is more the opposite of gesticulate, because gesticulate has that energetic and that body movement in it. Imperturbable is more the calmness and the relaxed and the reassured and hopeful aspects. Increment is a noun. It's an increase, addition, or gain, often by regular consecutive amounts. So increment fits more into the math family. So if you're counting numbers, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, that's an increase in an increment or a gain or an addition of some kind. And it has to be regular and it has to be consecutive. It can be in patterns. So if you go like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, if you have that idea of the pattern, but it's that increase. And you get raises in increments when you get a job, and you get a raise every year, how often you get it. It's an incremental raise. It's in small amounts, raising up to the next aspect. When you're playing a game and you're gaining points in increments. Levity is a noun. It's excessive frivolity or a lack of seriousness and joking. So the idea, yes, that you have someone that jokes a lot, but that is a different word. This is more the noun aspect. So this is the person themselves that is the joker, the person that isn't very serious, that they are excessive and frivolous in that and lacking that seriousness, and not necessarily doing it in the right appropriate way. So, but they're doing it to be funny, but it's the noun aspect, not the verb aspect. Okay, the next one we have is mortify. It's a verb, to embarrass or humiliate. Mort, if you look at the root of it, usually means going with the idea of being like something that's morbid or death-like. So if you're embarrassing or humiliating someone, you're doing it to that idea that you're doing it in such a negative way that they kind of like want to crawl up in their shell and not be around others. And that fits with the idea of the root of mortify, and morbid fitting in there as well. So you're embarrassing or you're humiliating someone. Periphery is a noun. The area around the edges or the outermost part, or the adjective relating to, involving, or forming an outer edge or boundary. So on the periphery of California, or on the area around the edges of California, you have different states. You have Oregon, you have Nevada, and you have Arizona. You also have the Pacific Ocean and Mexico. So that's the periphery, it's the border. On the periphery of Los Angeles, you have Glendale and Burbank and Pasadena. So keeping in mind that idea is what surrounds it. You might also on a periphery have a fence or another building or some aspect of a border of some kind. A raconteur is a noun. One who tells stories with skill and wit. These are your storytellers, your novel writers, your people who get up, your comedians who get up and tell stories, and they do it with wit, as in like they're smart and intelligent with their words, and helping it to progress, and they do it with skill. Reiterate is a verb, to say or do over again or to repeat. So when I go back and say the word reiterate 2 or 3 times, I'm repeating it. I'm doing it again. It's practicing that skill, practicing that idea of repetition. Subterfuge is a noun, a deceptive scheme or strategy. So it's not just the idea of having a plan to initiate to get what you want that's under the radar, but it's the idea of it's meant to deceive someone. So that goal of like scaring someone at Halloween, you're being deceptive and underground, and you're doing it in a strategic way as kind of a way to hide it, and being deceptive at the same time. This also fits into like the Navy SEALs when they go out to do their plans. They have schemes and they have a strategy to do it, but they're doing it underground and they're being deceptive. Usually we hear about it afterwards, but we don't know that it's actually taking place at that moment. Okay, the last word, vacillate, is a verb, to move back and forth from lack of balance or to waver. Or the second one, to alternate indecisively between opinions or courses of action. So the first one, I think of this as, if you look at a piano tuner, it has the arm that goes back and forth. It's vacillating, it's wavering, it can't balance, but it's moving between the 2 points as it's like keeping time to music. But it has that lack of balance. The second one is the idea that you're trying to make a decision, but you can't decide, do you want this or do you want that? So you're trying to figure out that decision. Okay, note cards are due on Friday with the quiz. The quiz is Friday right at the beginning of class, and bring your Wordly Wise books to class tomorrow because we will be using them for an activity in class. See you tomorrow.